If Josh Rae's Wraith Rovers debut at Celtic Park was a baptism of fire, his two subsequent appearances between the sticks have contained all the threat and jeopardy of an actual baptism. For the second week in a row, Rae didn't have to deal with so much as a light sprinkling of water on his forehead, as the efforts of those in front of him prevented Accies from creating a single legitimate chance. And at the other end, Dylan Easton's penalty and Finlay Pollock's header secured all 3 points for Barry Robson and ensured the Rovers could keep on looking up the table for the next couple of days at least. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I am Duncan Cameron, and we have a double header for you tonight as we look back on yesterday's 2-0 win over Hamilton and also ponder what's to come in Airdrie on Tuesday night. So with me for all of that and more, we have Leslie Mayborn. First of all, how are you, Les?
Absolutely delighted by that weekend's performance. I mean, we're now talking across multiple incarnations of Jamie Gullen. So whether it's like Jimmy McGill, whether it's like Saul Goodman, or whether it's like Gene Takovich, we've got somebody who's haunting Hamilton Accies in numbers of different guises and identities. So looking forward to discussing tonight.
Definitely. We've also got Robbie Weir as well. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I've had a perfect weekend, to be honest. I mean, not other than the minor cold that I've got at the moment. A lot to be enjoying from this weekend.
Good stuff. And rounding us off for tonight, we've got Carol Alison Smith as well. How are you, Carol?
I'm good. It's always good after a win. Everyone's happy. Nobody complains. It's lovely.
It is. It does make writing notes for the podcast slightly trickier. I will say that. It comes much more naturally when I sit down and I'm like, yeah, there's 17 things I want to complain about. But I'm sure we will manage to enjoy ourselves this evening regardless. Speaking of having trouble making podcast notes, we'd normally start by talking about the lineup for the game, but you were entirely justified in basically skipping that discussion in the pre-match, as Barry Robson did indeed keep the same 11 that had been so effective against Thistle. There was a change on the bench, so Lewis Gibson dropped out, having picked up a bit of a knock a couple of days beforehand, but we also saw the very welcome return of Sean Byrne. So fast forwarding us straight into the game itself, about 10 seconds in, Les, Ollie Shaw has a wild swing at the ball from about 20 yards out that's, I think, closer to troubling Ali Moore as he was making his way down the touchline than it was Josh Rae. Was that as good as it got for Accies yesterday?
Pretty much. I mean, the game started and about 10, 15 minutes in, you were sort of thinking, we've not really settled into this at all. The ball was just spending a lot of time in the air. It was finding all kinds of players' heads, and the referee also loved the sound of his own whistle, which didn't help either. And I mean, I think I was looking at some interactions with some Accies fans online, and a few of them had picked up on this. It was almost like Accies trying to drag us down to their level. And it was very much a game where they were going to try and just shit-fest a goal out of something and then just continue disrupting to see if they could get something. I did have horrible visions of like some kind of stramash in the box and Scott Robinson poking something away and then doing this darts wanker celebration in front of the crowd and then sitting in. But thankfully that didn't come to pass. And I mean, it does kind of show you where Accies are as a team. And I hope this doesn't sound disrespectful to any Accies supporters that are listening in, because I saw that lineup come out at 2, and I thought, that's actually pretty good. You've got Ollie Shaw there, you've got Charlie Telfer, you've got Regan Timothy, Ricky Lammy, even guys like Scott Robinson. A competent manager would have that team not playing like that and probably nowhere near the relegation spots. But I'm doing that thing that we've done quite a lot of time, which is talking a lot about the opposition and not much about the Rovers. So let's get back to talking about the Rovers.
Yeah. Yes, let's do that. Well, I think at some point we'll have to circle back to Accies. There's a couple of things I want to kind of touch upon, because I think they're a very odd football club at all levels, but a very odd team as well, as you say. But that opening, as you say, the opening period was very scrappy, but Carol, did you feel like the Rovers were going to settle after a bit of time? Were you concerned in those opening periods?
No, I mean, it wasn't pretty the first 10, 15 minutes. It wasn't beautiful football. But something that's definitely changed in the last few weeks is that you don't feel threatened in our half. We don't feel like they're going to get us at any point on the break. We're solid at the back and we're not leaky at the back, which is always the problem. If they're not near the goal, they can't score a goal. And that seems to be quite a basic thing that we've improved on, is if we don't let them near it, they can't score. So even though it wasn't the prettiest of starts, there wasn't that, oh well, they could get a scrappy one here and we're starting from 2 down before we know it. But no, it certainly doesn't have that feeling.
It's like it was scrappy, but it was scrappy in the middle of the park as opposed to being scrappy in our third, which was a feature earlier in the season. But the chances did start to build. Dylan Easton plays a lovely little reverse pass for Jamie Gullen, and Dean Linus makes a decent stop. And then the same two are involved again. Gullen has a nice little shot that he tries to kind of sneak into the near post, and I think everybody, including you would hope the goalkeeper, is expecting him to go across the goal, and again, Linus gets down well to it. Robbie, as you were watching those, and there was a couple of shots from distance that were maybe slightly less dangerous, did you feel like it was becoming a matter of time, or did you feel like it was still a wee bit frustrating?
I'd probably go into the latter camp. I think that Accies really set out to basically play the game in a way that they pressed us really quickly, and I think they knew that counter press was important just simply because of how impressive we'd been on our press. That's a lot of the word press in there. Effectively a situation where I think they saw us and how we played against Partick. Against Partick, we were fortunate in that they had Dan O'Reilly as their sort of one of their full-backs, which meant that we were getting a bit more time because it was kind of just Chalmers just on his own and Fitzpatrick maybe a bit less keen to go on the aggression, on the aggressive side. Whereas Accies were just kind of like, okay, we've got the majority of our squad that we need in there. Let's just press them and see what happens. But yeah, I think that we were creating the better of the opportunities, but we were still limited in doing that. We were playing it was a very different game compared to last weekend against Thistle. It was one where we had to be quite patient. We were a lot more direct in terms of how we had the ball, but we were still doing okay when we were getting to it. It's sort of, for all, they've got big lumbering galoots at the back, the likes of McGinty and Lammy. You still felt that Jamie Gullen was holding his own. Like he was, and as you say, with that Dylan Easton sort of through ball, I was maybe thinking at the time, could Gullen have done better with it? But still, you give credit to Linus for the save. It still shows that they were there to be got at. Like we managed to do that twice in the game at New Douglas Park, so there was every chance we could do it there. As it was, the goals that we did end up scoring very different compared to the ones that we had at New Douglas Park.
Yeah, it was so half an hour in that we get the penalty, and I did think at that point actually that it was a bit of a relief. But maybe it's meant not quite the right word, but like we weren't sort of knocking on the door. It was very much a case of the game was bogged down in the middle of the park, and every sort of 5 minutes or so we would have a chance, and they weren't doing the same. But it didn't, as I say, didn't feel like it was building and building and building. But then when the penalty comes, it did also feel at that point like, oh, I don't think we're going to look back here, which I think is a very Barry Robson kind of characteristic, which we'll probably come back to later on, that we maybe haven't had previously. Let's talk about this penalty, though. Robbie, I'll come back to you, actually, because obviously you were in the ground the same as me. So what did you think initially to the challenge?
I thought, from the South Stand view, I thought it was a pretty clear penalty, to be honest. I know that John Rankin and the Hamilton fans were saying it was an outrageous decision, a sheer injustice of refereeing. But yeah, the referees got it absolutely spot on. And yeah, from the South Stand then, it certainly looked like it'd just been taken out quite cynically off the ball. A ridiculous number of penalties we have had this season, which has been great. But again, you only get them if you're going forward. So yeah, I think that Maguire's just absolutely chopped him down, taking the legs away from him. And I know that he's won the ball, but he's done it by taking the legs away from Dylan Easton. Like, John Rankin's confused by the comments about the referee saying that he's won the ball. He's won the ball because he's effectively wiped out Dylan Easton, then taken the ball after. Very simple explanation for it.
Yeah, from the other end, my kind of immediate thought was like, that's such a messy challenge. Like, whether he's actually touched the ball a millisecond before he's touched the man or vice versa, you're really asking the referee to make a decision, because he's not sort of sliding in front of the ball and the man and then clearing them both as they crash into him. He really is sort of crashing through Dylan Easton to get the ball. So it's like, from the other end, I actually don't know which way round it's been, but I can completely see why it's been given. And actually then watching it back, it's like, yeah, that definitely is a penalty. Easton does very well to kind of get himself across because the ball is there. But by the time Lammy dives in, it's very much not. He's covered himself. And it is like, yeah, at a certain point, his foot makes contact with the ball, but only after he's cleared Dylan Easton out. So, yeah, the replay cleared that up for me. Les, did that seem pretty apparent to you on first viewing?
From Race TV, it did. I mean, we also had the privilege of getting multiple angles, which is something that is new for Race TV this season. We're getting all kinds of multiple angles and very quick replays. But I mean, come on, you can't slide in a guy from behind in the box when he's clear through and goal, and then then kind of vaguely gesture towards him getting the ball. We've had this in the group chat a few times about some of the cliches that you use only at football, and this absolutely was giving the referee a decision to make. And you know, if you're sliding, if you're effectively pressing circle from behind a guy in the box when he's clean through on goal, there's only one way that's going to go. I mean, can we just have a shout out as well for the Accies fan, who, it was brought to my attention on social media earlier, ran all the way from the top of the stand to the bottom to express his displeasure at that penalty happening when it happened. So that's somebody getting their steps in for the day at least, and 1/60th of the Accies support getting a bit of exercise in. So shout out to that man.
A real pressure stakes penalty in front of an empty north end of Starks Park. Real pressure there. Great penalty from Dylan Easton, though. Got to say that as well.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, it's one on the last week, obviously. Again, they all count. Even Lewis Jameson's one at Hampden, they all count. But if they hit the back of the net or go over the line, but yeah, he's not a keeper in the world, as Jim Clark aptly put it on Race TV. Was going to be stopping that one.
Yeah, nice to see Dylan Easton celebrate with the ball boy as well. That they'd been talking about it the day before at one of the Train Litter Pro sessions. It's lovely to see. Just a nice little bit of added angle to that. So from there into half time, I don't think there was anything particularly kind of notable, but maybe the most notable thing, Carol, was really a lack of response from Accies. They just didn't really seem to have anything to throw at us at all.
The word I would describe them is they're just clunky. There's nothing that moves easily about them. Finances, allegedly. Their team, their manager, nothing is moving well. It's just clunky as F. And their goalie saved them yesterday. We could have been 4-5. Gullen could have been on a hat-trick easy if he hadn't been on form. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. And Dean Linus is one of the ones who's had... I
can't take his name seriously, Linus. I don't know why. Just reminds me of... is it Snoopy? Yeah, Linus.
It's not the Isle of Hoy. Seriously.
It's a big military museum in the Isle of Hoy. If you ever go there on holiday up in Orkney, there's a Linus where they've got the Scapa Flow Museum where the shipwrecks from World War I and World War II are. So that's what I always think of when I hear his name. That mediocrity. No, I think you're right, Carol. When the penalty went in, my first thought was, oh shit, he's going to save this. And then he's going to play a blinder. And it's going to be one of those days where he's going to have a Callum Ferry type game. But thankfully he didn't.
Yeah, I'd say he's been one of the ones who's had a his fair share of criticism, maybe even more than his fair share of criticism recently. But I think you're right. I think he kept the score down to a certain degree. I mean, the Rovers never hit any real kind of free-flowing. I don't think they were as good as they had been the week before, and I don't know how much of that is you want to kind of credit Accies for that, or whether it was just the Rovers didn't quite hit a groove. But ultimately, they didn't really have to either. I mean, it really did feel like at any point, in the entire game, the Rovers always looked more likely to score than Accies did. It's a very disconcerting feeling. Not one that we're used to at all. And I think there is a real element of control. And maybe it's just these two games, right? Because obviously before that we're at Celtic Park, and then before that we get beat by Dunfermline. So potentially we're at risk of reading too much into this. But Robbie, how much of that... So these last two games, we effectively haven't given up a single significant chance. How much of that are you willing to ascribe to Barry Robson and his organisational instructions, and how much to the change in goalkeeper, which has obviously been a talking point recently?
Yeah, I mean, it's undeniable that both of them have had quite a big impact. I think that, look, Barry Robson's obviously got them playing such a willingness to press, and he's shown that he can be quite ruthless where he needs to be, which is great for the good of the team. I do feel sorry for Big Kev. Josh Rae's been excellent since he's came in, albeit, as you say, without having to do much. But you can just see in terms of the organisation for the defence, I don't think you can really sort of deny that there does feel just this sort of relaxation about it. And again, we're yet to see a game where we're really put under the cosh, or we get a team like maybe Ayr or Falkirk coming to town, or Livingston causing carnage. Even Airdrie, again, come Tuesday night might be an issue. But yeah, that just feels like the centre backs know what to expect. His distribution's been tremendous, which in turn lets people get up the field. Start of the first half, almost straight away, you look at that ball to Jordan Doherty that's just pinged out to the wing, and I don't think I've seen a better ball out from a goalkeeper in a good long time, just in the sense of the direction that the ball goes, the sort of trajectory of it, just so aesthetically pleasing.
What I like about that, sorry to interrupt, I'll let you continue in a second. What I really like about that is that he forces Doherty to run onto it.
Yeah.
He's not played it to feet, he's played it a good 10 yards in front of him. And it's really like, I don't care if you want to take this into feet, you're not getting the choice. You're just going to have to run for this. And the space was there, and it was a good choice. So I like that. It's very much not a safe option.
Yeah.
Like he's executing it well, and it is a very, very good pass.
But you take it back to the first goal against Partick, where Partick pushed up high because it looked like we were going to be playing the ball out to our centre backs. So they have three players going high, and then he just chips it out to Stevenson. Just a little dinked ball, and automatically that's three West Partick players that you've got to worry about. And then we got the pitch, and then we get our first goal. I think that you can see that Paul Hanlon's really came into his own. Jordan Doherty has just looked absolutely exceptional as well the last few games. He's really coming into a groove. And then Liam Dick's just consistently consistent. That's just stepped up to the mark, which in turn offered us a really good basis to be able to go on and dominate games and control them. And once we get into a lead, we started looking a lot more just controlled. At no point sort of during that game yesterday was I sort of particularly worried about Accies coming back into it, because I just felt we had a good stranglehold on it.
It's, well, as you said already, like at the beginning, you can't watch a game of football without being at least a little bit concerned about the sort of freak occurrences that could happen. But, Carol, as you said, if they're actually nowhere near the goal, you think, like, this is going to have to really deflect off Scott Robinson's arse to go in for here. Like, this would have to be...
How windy was it yesterday, speaking of freaks? Because there was one corner that maybe should have been retaken, that the wind might have had a factor. And I know Robson said it didn't. You couldn't tell from the TV, but it definitely. I couldn't understand why they were playing it in the air for the first 20 minutes if it was that gusty.
There was a lot of that because it was very, very windy, and it was sort of across the park as well. So it wasn't like, oh, one team's got it in the first half and it'll be different. And there was a fair bit of that. Linus more so actually like kicking it long, and nobody's really sort of worked out that this is going to drift a good 30 yards across from where you think it's going to go. But that back line just really does look very, very comfortable. And I think a huge part of it is just that, with the exception of Josh Mullen, who, as we said last week, is sort of in a bit of he's kind of part of the defence, but not really. He's got a sort of hybrid role on that side. It's a funny setup for a back five. The other four all look very, very comfortable with exactly where they are. So Hanlon in the middle gets to do all the stuff that he is, for this level, incredible at, without the same kind of onus on having to play out or run out from the back. Doherty and Dick, I think both of them look best suited to being either side of a three, because they've got that bit of football in them, but also the ability to defend as well. So that really does seem to be bringing the best out of them, as opposed to, where you see maybe like Ewan Murray on the right of a three. He's not quite as comfortable, and they just do look very well suited. And again, I'm slightly cautious about reading too much into it, like particularly for Josh Rae, because he really hasn't had anything to do at all, really. And that'll be interesting for Tuesday, because if anybody's going to know how to target whatever weaknesses he has, it's going to be Airdrie, naturally. But you have to credit the team to say 2 games in a row the opposition have had no chances. It's very unlikely to be a coincidence. You're doing things to make that happen.
Just to come back in there, I think you've got to give with Paul Hanlon, he did so well, because Accies really just just tried to brutalise him. There's no other way of really looking at it. There wasn't any sort of finesse to their build-up play. It was very much just shoving him over time and time again. And you could see why that would maybe get frustrating for a guy like Paul Hanlon, but he's just continually just kept ahead, just worked through it, and again, got his just rewards from it, came away with a clean sheet, so he'll have the last laugh with that one.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that,
popped
actually.
Up on the left at one point. At some point, it was the first half, and we were pressing. And then the ball pings out to the left. And like, oh, here we are. Here's Dylan Easton. Oh, wait, no, that's number 4. That's Paul Hanlon. What's he doing there? And then, to his credit, put a very, very good cross ball in, which nothing came of. But I was like, how did he get there? Furthest up the pitch I've ever seen him out of a set-piece situation.
Well, there was one in the second half as well, when he went on what I could only describe as a Marvin Andrews-esque
That's right.
barreling run through the middle. And what I really like about those is when you see the defender, they find themselves in that position and they play the pass, and every single one of them can't help but going for the 1-2. So they're only playing the first pass because they're uncomfortable at how high up the park they are, but they cannot help themselves going, well, maybe just I'll keep going. And Hanlon does it, and it's just the pass, I think, gets blocked. And you can see the real sort of cartoon style where he's like, dang it, and has to go back again. But Robbie, I'm glad you mentioned that in the first half, because Aki's really very deliberately just jumping into him. In that way where it's just disrupt him. Actually, if you go up and just try and win headers, you're not going to get it. So just take it in turns to just jump into him. And what I really liked was that by the second half, with the knowledge that the referee wasn't punishing that, Finlay Pollock deciding to do his best Cody David impression and just foul every time he went for a high ball, just not even remotely looking at the ball, just jumping into folk, and didn't concede a single free kick doing it. So fair play. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Adjusting to the referee that's in front of you. If he's not giving fouls for it, crack on.
We knew the referee was going to be wildly inconsistent, because it was the guy that sent off Liam Dick for 2 yellow cards that were never yellows back at Livingston back in the autumn. So, yeah, Scott
Brown got his yellow. I was worried that he was going to get another one just for something stupid. I was concerned that we were going to have to substitute him earlier than expected, because it was they're going to play for him to get another yellow, but it didn't pan out that way.
It's all right. You've got Ross Matthews doing all the dirty work as soon as... Again, same happened during the Partick game. Ross Matthews was just kind of okay, you got past him. You're not getting past me, though. And just Aye.
Some really, really decent passing from Ross Matthews as well, particularly in the second half. Just not taking the easy route sometimes, playing, fairly tricky passes in that way that you see sometimes where, you've maybe got the ball in the midfield and the wingers, someone's gone out to the wing and you play the easy pass where you play it to the fullback and all he's going to do is give it to the winger and you think you could have just taken the chance and gone for that yourself. Matthews was doing that very well the second half, just moving the ball nice and quickly and getting things going. I agree with you, Carol, when Scott Brown got that booking, given it was such a soft booking as well, it wasn't on the highlights. I didn't go back to the full match replay to try and find it. I was a little bit concerned, as you say, Robbie, with that knowledge that Liam Dick got 2 yellows for very little off this referee previously. But again, I think what you have to do is give full credit to Scott Brown for that, because he managed to do exactly what he does without then putting a single foot wrong for the rest of the game. We're jumping around a little, but when he was subbed off, very clearly not happy about it.
No.
And first thing to say about that is I think Barry Robson's absolutely correct to do it. There's 10 minutes plus injury time left. We've got a game on Tuesday night. He's on a booking. We're 2-0 up. We're comfortable. It's the right decision. But I also think Barry Robson is exactly the kind of guy who is delighted when people are furious to be subbed off. I just imagine that. Says I can hear Barry Robson saying, if players are happy to be coming off, I don't want them. I can hear, that strikes me as his attitude. But Scott Brown in the unfortunate position of having to go off at the point closest to where he was, so had to do his angry walk, a full sort of 80 yards right the way around the park.
Aye.
Right, let's see, what else have we got in the notes that I've not covered? Not a huge amount in this game, if you can't tell already by the amount of tangents we've been on. Actually, on that point as well, sorry, there was one other thing that I thought was very, very funny. Right after half-time, so just before half-time, it was Barry Maguire had been bandaged up in proper kind of comedy fashion, real sort of not great care taken to make sure that was a discreet piece of bandaging. And because this is the only thing I went back to the full match replay to check, and unfortunately there's just not quite a decent enough angle for it, where the ball gets knocked up to him and he headers it, and straight away as soon as he headers it, he's like, and just holding his head. And it really reminded me of a thing that hopefully some people will know what I'm talking about. It's a gif of a guy in a football crowd, might be a Rangers game, and something happens and he starts clapping, but all of his fingers are bandaged. So he does 2 claps and a really heavy wince. And that was exactly what Barry Maguire did. Where he's just Barry's head up. Really shouldn't have done that. It's very funny. Made me laugh. And as I say, with the lack of other incidents, that's what made my notes for this episode. But let's at least get to the other major point in the game. So we get 2-0. Robbie, I think this was the best bit of football in the whole afternoon. Very deserving of a goal at the end of it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it was tremendous. The ball out from Brown is outstanding. Out to Jamie Gullen. Gullen controls it and then obviously just gets it off to Stevenson. And the cross is fantastic, but also so much credit to Finlay Pollock, because, again, admittedly, it's not the giant lumbering oafs that I've aforementioned before. Your McGinty's and Lammy's, I think Lammy was off by that point. But they brought on the boy Gallagher, who'd been at Liverpool, who's not really made much of an impression for them. And Jackson Longridge, and he just gets in between them perfectly, because neither of them are centre backs, frankly. So I think both are kind of expecting the other to handle it, and he's just there. And we're going to send him back to Hearts at some point. They're going to be getting a striker when they thought they had a winger. But yeah, he's yet another one for Finlay Pollock. Great to see him continuing his streak in terms of goal scoring. Long may it continue.
Yeah, definitely. I really liked this goal starts with, I think it's 2 passes back and forth between Finlay Pollock and Scott Brown, sort of on the halfway line. And then, as you say, Brown takes the ball, takes a second to kind of compose himself, and then hits that big switch, and that gives Pollock the time go heading into the box to take up that position. The other thing I liked about this is just the little touch that Dylan Easton has into Lewis Stevenson. You know, the number of times that people got on for overplaying and all this kind of stuff, and always selfish. That's just really, you know, you'd almost, you'd forgive him for taking that touch in and trying to turn towards goal and maybe stepping in himself or having a shot from there even. And the fact that he knows Stevenson's coming, just one touch, plays it into him, it's just very, very tidy, and it gives Stevenson the time and space to get that cross in. Leslie, if we'd conceded that goal, how long would we have spent talking about the marking for the three defenders on Finlay Pollock?
A good 10 minutes, and it would have been in one of my Twitter threads, and it would have been added to my various infographics. I mean, I know, like Robbie said, we've turned Finlay Pollock from a winger / kind of attacking midfielder into an out-and-out striker, but he's not exactly built like Didier Drogba. You know, he shouldn't be difficult for somebody to mark him and pick him up. And also, I know we gave Linus a lot of credit earlier, but that ball hit the ground and then bounced up. It wasn't a swoosh straight into the back of the net. It wasn't a nothing but net effort. So, no, I mean, if that had been the Rovers, I would have been raging. When you've got that many bodies in the box and you've got that much time to know what's coming in, and have a guy effectively on the 6-yard line who is, not the kind of guy you'd expect to be leaping up like a salmon and heading things in. It's almost as bad, but not quite, as Kirk Broadfoot on Aidan Connolly at Capello last season. It's almost that level, but not quite. But no, I'm very glad that was Accies, not us.
Yeah, it's just like as Pollock goes into the box, there's three defenders. It's McGinty, somebody, and Tony Gallagher, as you say. And as the ball goes out to Stevenson, there's two of them are quite far apart, and Pollock's in the middle with the middle defender. And the two of them both realise he's there and have the time to come in, and still between the three of them, they don't really manage to put him off at all. Like Pollock's, this is not a criticism by any means at all. Like Pollock's movement doesn't have to be really good, because actually from his starting position is really good, and the defence just don't do enough to nullify it, that he's able to just kind of take a step back and then get that header. As you say, I think he does get credit for heading it down into the ground. But yeah, Dean Linus not covering himself in Corey with that one.
I would just add as well, and I'm sure, probably Blair. I'm going to give it to Blair. I don't know if it was Blair, but I'm going to give him credit anyway. How often did we see sort of like, particularly the latter half of last season, early part of this season, did we see balls like that just bouncing out the other side and you're raging? Yeah. So it's great that he's had the spatial awareness just to get in there. Again, it just looks like one of those changes that just seems to be working for us, and long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was one of the big kind of Premier League football TV show / podcast things I saw this morning was running a feature called Our Strike Partnerships Back. And I can only assume they've been watching a lot of Jamie Gullen and Finlay Pollock over the last couple of weeks. The Rovers very much ahead of the curve on that one. Carol, after that point, the Rovers are 2-0 up. There are additional chances. There's a couple of breakaways. Gullen has one down the left. Josh Mullen has one down the right that don't quite come to anything. At that point, though, were you quite content with a 2-0 home and hosed, given what we've had with Accies previously?
Once bitten, twice shy. I mean, to be honest, even though it was Accies, I did not have that fear yesterday, even though it was Accies, and maybe that's just me being a bit cocky, and it will all get kicked out of me with the Airdrie on Tuesday. But no, I think I don't know who said it, but it's the word comfy, but not, the players are comfortable, but not in a lazy way, but just they know what they're doing, and they know what the person next to them's doing, and they know what the person behind them's doing. And nobody's looking around going, oh, they're not where I would expect them to be. And so I felt comfortable. I'm going to stick with the word comfortable at 2.
And Les, do you think that's at this point, with no choice, does that have to go down as full credit to Barry Robson for instilling that game management? Given we've got so many of the same players, but that we were never like that under any of our other managers recently.
I think it absolutely does. And I mean, Hamilton were not great. They weren't. I mean, I think that they started a lot better than they did when we played them at New Douglas Park. They weren't great at New Douglas Park. Partick were not great, but how many times in the last 2.5 seasons have we had games where we've come away being like, they were absolutely pish, but we let them back in it? So we had Arbroath twice last season. We had Accies earlier this season. We had the Inverness game where he won 3-2 and a boy dropped his knees in prayer on the 18-yard line afterwards. You know, so many times in the last 2.5 seasons where we've had games where we've been ahead, we've been either 1-0 and comfortable or 2-0 or whatever, and we've ended up dropping points because something has happened and we've not reacted to it. So I think there has to be a lot of credit to Barry Robson and also to the players for just turning a corner. I mean, you're going to have games where you take the lead, but you don't win. That happens in football. But, you know, to have 3 games in the past however many weeks where we've gone ahead, we've not battered the opposition into submission, but we've gone ahead and we've just stayed in control and we've not done anything daft. Robson and the players, knowing what's happened before, deserve an awful lot of credit for that, I think.
And Robbie, I said I wanted to come back to Hamilton just a little bit because I find them such a difficult team to pin down. So, like when we talked about Thistle last week, you know, you had a list as long as your arm of all the things that were wrong with Partick Thistle. You know, we're like Bannigan, his head went, Turner was playing out of position, Ablade was a real downgrade on Brian Graham, like Fitzpatrick's not doing what he normally does. We could have done loads of that, and we don't, you know, really know anything about Partick Thistle. Whereas Accies seem like the complete opposite to me. They seem really like a total kind of nothing side. You're not like, oh, that guy's doing badly, or how do you analyse a side like Accies after something like that?
Yes. Look, I think that the majority of their performances that they put in yesterday were probably 6 out of 10s at best. I don't think any of their players probably made a 7, and they were all very, very anonymous. And I'm using 6 by the Classic Championship Manager 102 definitions of being an average performance. Maybe...
Yeah, you start on a 6.
Yes. And then a 5 becomes immediate poor performance. I don't think they had any stinkers in there. But I know where their key flaw is, and that's the fact that they've got a manager that's not very good, and a board that seem to love the manager. The fans hate him. The fact that he had a fan celebrating a shot on target later on in the game, I don't know if it actually should have counted as a shot on target or not, but yeah, they are just such a weird club. Like, I know that we touched on it a lot in the pre-match podcasts, but everything about them is just absolutely bonkers. Like the fact that you've got fans that they want rid of their manager, but they're very reluctant to slaughter their board because of the money that their chairman's chucking in, allegedly. This huge wink there. And yet there's so much that you can pick holes at with them. They just feel like a club where, like, look, that they almost feel destined to be going down that route of, like, within the next few years, like, down into League One again, and just that spell. It's just really hard to see how, and it really frustrates me as well, because I do, like, you hear through the grapevine that we do lose out, like, potentially on players and things like that to clubs like that. Certainly with their social media, they've made big attempts to sort of say, oh, we've signed this player ahead of other clubs. And then you, as a fan of the team that's supposedly lost out or has lost out, you're sitting there thinking, this is a club that really doesn't seem to offer that much. They've obviously got a very loyal core support, and fair play to those that do go along, because again, as with every other town in Scotland, there's a huge problem in that people go off and support the old firm rather than their local teams. But with Accies, to be sort of like making these gestures, you're very hard on sympathy to sort of say, like, okay, if you're slaughtering us for players that you've supposedly picked out, even though nobody can see how you are doing it financially with the money. Nobody can see how you are making ends meet. And apparently you've got this academy, then living off the likes of Ryan Oney going for stupid amounts of money, potential sell-on fees. You're just a bit like, you feel very much like a Partick Thistle Mark II. And if Accies went down again, Dunfermline's my pick to go down simply because it would be absolutely hysterically funny. But if Accies go down, I'm not really going to be missing too much, are we?
Well, it's a really weird squad, I think, because, like Les, as you said, you look at the team lines and you go, well, like, in terms of the championship, you go, he's decent, he's been here for years. Like, you know you're going to get, as you say, Robbie, like, you know you'll get 6 out of 10 out of him. Like, you know, Tumulty's on the bench for, you know, well, allegedly. He fell out with the manager and there's issues at the back of that. But, I mean, like, Ollie Shaw and Scott Robinson, that's a decent attack for sort of any team in the championship, really. You'd maybe not want to start the season with that as your front two, but if that was sort of your second choice and your third choice strikers, you'd be pretty pleased, I think, for just about anybody in the championship. Like Sean McGinty, absolutely fine at this level. Ricky Lammy, I know we slaughtered him last time out, but he was very good at this level, got a move above. Barry Maguire's been a Premiership player for years. Like, there's good players in there, but they just don't seem to come to the fore, and they don't seem to really have much of an identity to them, even as individuals.
They don't have a Dylan Easton, for example, like a focal point that you sort of look at and you go, right. I mean, Ollie Shaw, you could sort of say potentially him, but even I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but the sort of post that was put up on Pine Bovril by one of the Accies fans who sort of said, like, it was actually Alan, one of the Rovers fans said Accies weren't any better, but with Shaw in there, you always have a chance of getting a goal from nothing. And then an Accies fan basically came out saying, you're said to being a top half team means that you're now safe from Ollie Shaw scoring. In fact, since scoring a hat-trick against Morton in October, his only league goals have been against a terrible Airdrie side and a penalty against Dunfermline that was fortunate to squeeze in. Don't get me wrong, he's scored a lot of important goals and he's low down the list of our problems, but he's not posing much of a threat at the moment. Now, again, that might be down to the interdynamics between him and John Rankin and the way that the squad is, like low morale and things like that. And obviously, to have the number of goals that he has had, like, you would take that in any sort of side division. But yeah, it just feels like even their sort of focal point is not shining as much as you might see with other teams.
I mean, Les, do you think it's as straightforward as a better manager would be able to get a tune out of that side? Or do you think there is something fundamentally lacking in that playing squad?
I think a lot has got to go down to the manager. And I feel conflicted because I always had a lot of time for John Rankin as a player. You know, I thought he was a model professional when he was a player. You know, he did kind of interesting stuff. He went and played in Brazil, albeit for 2 weeks. But
didn't get fed in that time.
Didn't get fed, came home. That was the end of that. But you do feel that it's reached a point with him where, I don't know, I mean, there's stories circulating about him having lost the dressing room or at least divided the dressing room. We don't know. But you get the feeling that it's kind of reached a point of no return. And I mean, there's a point where managers do get credit in the bank. And you could look at him and you could say, he won a Challenge Cup with them. He brought them up. He took them down, but he didn't inherit them halfway through a season when they were already on a bad run. But you kind of get the feeling it has reached the end of the road, given the extent to which the support has also turned against him. And I mean, the Wraith TV, when I was listening in when we were away at New Douglas Park, you could barely hear the commentary. You could barely hear Davey and Jim over the Rankin GTF chants that were going on for almost the full 90 minutes. And you wonder whether it does just need somebody else coming in to get guys like Ollie Shaw firing again. Well, like I said at the start of the programme, I think that group of players, they're not going to win every week, but with a competent manager that's able to unite the dressing room, they shouldn't be anywhere near 9th. And I'm just glad it has taken until we are 9 points ahead of them with a game in hand, at least, for that penny to drop if it does.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Robbie, about them being like all of them are 6 out of 10, and that's almost where I would put that squad in the league as well. Like, I think that's a solid 6th place squad, and obviously they're very much underperforming that.
Maybe it'll come out that Ollie Shaw's actually their women's manager, and that if John Rankin does get the sack, then he can go on a rampage in the press about how that was the best training session they've done in terms of running.
I feel like John Rankin's probably the opposite of that.
Aye, John Rankin.
Whoever comes in and be like, we've actually run the least in training this week, and everybody's delighted.
Sean McGinty's just the picture of just a body full of lactic acid because John Rankin's ran him so much into the ground.
That's probably enough about Accies. I thought that was just it was an odd contrast between the two, where it was, as Thistle, there was so many individual points of failure, and Accies, you're just like, well, they're just generally kind of shite. And it's difficult to start picking it apart on a more kind of detailed level.
See, just on a final point with Accies, again, if they win that game, they go 3 points behind us. Instead, we're now 9 ahead. It's just the positive that we were so convincing in a game that we had to be convincing them, in a sense of like just assured in the defence. Not a great performance by any means. I don't think anyone's going to come away saying that was a classic. But if we can add those in with the games like we did against Thistle last week, we're on a winner.
Yeah, and I think Tuesday night when we were playing Airdrie, Accies are playing Dunfermline. It's a huge game. You would not fancy whoever gets beat there to have an enjoyable rest of the season. But as we'll leave that behind, that's what we're straying into other people's remit, talking about games that don't have the Rovers in them. So let's come back around to man of the match to finish up this one, and indeed any other kind of final points. Carol, do you want to kick us off with suggestions for man of the match, please?
Jamie Gullen, but his exposed shins are giving me the fear at the moment. They really are. The amount of times I've cracked my shin off my pedal on my bike, I know he's got tiny shin pads, but yeah, just for his bravery alone, I'm giving man of the match, because ouch.
Yeah, it does seem like tempting fate. Robbie, how about you? Man of the match?
I would have to say between Paul Hanlon or Jordan Doherty for me. I felt that Doherty, again, just looks brilliant in his distribution with the ball, and willingness to get forward. And then Hanlon was just, again, he's been a colossus for weeks on end. Heary and Lato saying this behind me in the South Stand, just about how he's not getting the respect that he's due. A lot of the time, he's been sensational over the last few weeks in particular. Just looks like the signing that we thought we were going to get, and long may it continue.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's you can make a case for a lot of guys in this one. I mean, that's between the two of you. You've mentioned 4 already, and I've got 2 others written down. If Accies were kind of 6 out of 10 across the board, you'd easily argue the Rovers were 8 out of 10 across the board for this. But Leslie, for you, anyone?
I would also say Paul Hanlon. I think absolutely. So many weeks he's just been tremendous, and because he's doing his job well, it doesn't necessarily get noticed as well. He's heading things, he's clearing things. I'd love it at the end of the season. He should be on track to be the player of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just something to note as well, and it was something we talked about, I can't remember, somebody put it in our group chat, it may have been Michael Watson actually, that people think that when you bring in a Premiership defender, that means that you don't concede at all, ever, and that if you do, they're rubbish. And that's categorically not the case. And we've had games where we've conceded goals, but that is not Paul Hanlon's fault. So he was tremendous yesterday, and he's been fantastic recently. Also, just a word as well for Scott Brown. That, for me, was, I think, the best performance I've seen from somebody who got a yellow card early on since 2009, when Marvin Andrews snapped someone in half in an Alloa game after 3 minutes, and then had to play the duration of the game with a massive grin on his face on a yellow card. So, Paul Hanlon for me.
So I think that was 5 or 6 that you mentioned between there. Nobody mentioned either goal scorer, which again I think speaks a lot about this game. Because both of them obviously deserve a lot of credit. Pollock really doing that job very, very well. I mean, just that's what you need to your sort of pressing forward to do. It looks like that's what he's been doing for years. And yeah, very much, I think, any of us who were maybe doubting his contributions previously, very much throwing that back at us, and rightly so.
He's the Benjamin Button of Grant Anderson, basically. Grant Anderson, who started his career as a winger, moved into being a forward. It's the opposite for Finlay Pollock.
And then Dylan Easton, I think, again, deserves a lot of credit because he is also basically playing out of position. In that sort of roving kind of number 10 behind the other two. It's quite disciplined. Again, which I said before, I don't imagine would be his first choice, would be to have quite a specific task when we don't have the ball. But he's very, very good at it. And, he's racing away as our top goal scorer now. And people will say, a lot of them are penalties. You still got to put penalties in the goal.
Yeah.
And that's, we're up to the point now where we're well beyond sort of law of averages. He sort of should have missed one by now. And as you said earlier on, Robbie, that's a great penalty. If the one against us wasn't the best, that was up there. That was a very, very good one.
That's the bit that I would take objection with Leslie sort of saying Paul Hanlon being our player of the season, because I think for me, Dylan Easton's he's got that wrapped up. It would require something pretty catastrophic for Dylan Easton not to be picking up a trophy player of the season.
But I think, was it the Fife Free Press that used to do, is it the Star Man or the Star Score or something? Star Check, thank you. Where it's 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star. And go through. I feel like Paul Hanlon has been in the top 3 every game, but never gets to be the top 1. He never gets 3 stars. He's had 2 or 1 every single game. And he deserves a lot more credit. I think it is an element of just he's doing exactly what we knew he would do. But if anyone else at this level was doing that, you'd be raving about it. And we should be raving about him. And I thought Ross Matthews also was very, very good. Complimenting Scott Brown very nicely. I think, again, a few months ago, I probably would have said, 2 of them are pretty similar. That's not a great 2-man midfield. You probably need someone else in there, but they've adapted very, very well in Sean Byrne's absence, particularly these last couple of games.
I feel like it speaks quite volumes about even the high standard that we set against Partick Thistle and the discipline yesterday. That the biggest complaint that people maybe had, and you saw a couple of people sort of comment on it, was Josh Mullen maybe missing a few passes, not being able to get on the end of a few balls. If that's the scope of your complaints, then very, very good couple of weeks on the pitch.
I think especially, the one kind of relatively late on when he's running through onto that. But I think I'm so pleased that we got those running stats to last season and this season, because it really opened my eyes to the power of work that Josh Mullen puts in. And I think that's, he's been knocking his pan in for 80 minutes and then gets right, there's clean air, go and run into that. And you can just see it's it's a tired mind as much as anything. And it's he's trying to cut the ball across and it's blocked immediately. But again, as I say, I don't think there's any kind of criticism to be levelled. It's a very, very good game from everybody across the board. A very sort of professional, comfortable 2-0 win. Kind of game that we basically never got under Ian Murray. For all his strengths, we never really had a game like that, where it was right, here's a team that are doing pretty badly. Can you just go out and beat them?
Yep.
And be quite happy, quite comfy, and then get up the road. And, take that anytime we can get it. So let's leave that game for now, have a quick break, we'll come back, talk about Airdrie. Blair.
Yes, mate.
You're a man
Yes.
And you have thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Yes.
Are you good at talking about all that stuff?
Well, I try my best, but I don't know. Probably not as much as I should.
I'm the same. I feel better after getting stuff like that off my chest, but I don't do it anywhere near often enough. Have you heard about Andy's Man Club?
They're brilliant. They create a safe space for men to sit down and talk about the important stuff. And they do it right across the country as well.
Yeah, exactly. They've got more than 200 meetings across the UK, and it's every Monday night at 7 o'clock, including one at Starks Park.
And if anyone wants more information on it, they can go to andysmanclub.co.uk or search for Andy's Man Club on Facebook. It's okay to talk, and now we're going to get back to talking about the Rovers.
So we turn our attention now to a trip to Airdrie on Tuesday night, which hasn't been a happy hunting ground for us recently, or at least it feels that way. If you'll forgive the cliche overload, Carol, is it just a case of we go again for Barry Robson and his team after these two good wins?
Yep. Once more with feeling, I think. That's same lineup, same feeling, same scoreline would be nice. Yep. That's all I want.
Yeah, definitely take the same scoreline. Robbie, would you agree with that? Just the same again?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Airdrie are by no means any pushovers. I think while they're down in that position that they're in, I know Barry Robson, I think he sort of touched on it, that they might be in a bit of a false position at the moment. But yeah, I'm expecting a tough game. I think it's going to be different to the game yesterday and the game last week. Airdrie are a very young team. When you actually look at the starting lineup that they had against Thistle, the oldest player that they had was Adam Frizzell, who was 27. Other than that, every single player that was in their squad was 25 or under. In terms of the rest of their team, Ben Wilson seems to have hit a bit of form now. He's got 6 goals in his last 10 games, I believe. So he seems to be rekindling the form that he had in the League Cup. So yeah, by all means, a tricky game waiting for us on Tuesday.
Yeah, so in their last 6 games, they lost 2, then they won 2, and now they've drawn their last 2, which is in, really stark contrast to their first half of the season, where they just lost a lot. And, really going into January, looked dead and buried. Just did not look remotely capable of even asking the question. But Leslie, have we written Airdrie off too soon? Do you think they've got the capability or the opportunity to reel in an Accies or a Dunfermline?
I'm conflicted. So when we played them at Starks, we talked about this, and I'd thought they were going to do what Arbroath had done the season before and Cove had done the season before, which was just completely implode and end up picking up something like 9 points or something like that. Fear, and all the signs were at the time that that's what was going to happen. And for a good few weeks, it looked like that's what was going to happen. Fair play, though, they have, whether it's a combination of players coming back from injury or whatever, they have sort of turned it round. The one thing to note is they have had a lot of games recently against teams who are on very poor runs of form. So, they've had Partick, they've had Dunfermline, they've had Accies as well, they've had Queen's Park. They've had a lot of games kind of against teams who have not been on great runs of form. And this is going to sound like weird mental gymnastics, but I'm actually quite glad in a sense that we're not playing them after they've lost 10 on the bounce or something like that. Because I think that might just sharpen a few minds to the fact that we can't just turn up and expect to win. So Robbie and I were saying this after the game on Saturday, that the worry with a game like the Accies game is that we subconsciously just think we've got to turn up and we'll win. So hopefully the fact that Airdrie have been on this wee run does just kind of make everybody realise we're not just going to turn up and piss it, and it is going to be a difficult game against a team who are, they've, I think they've got a chance of reeling in Accies and Dunfermline. It reminds me of St Mirren actually in the Gary Locke season. And again, I'm just glad that we're able to see this from the vantage point of being 9 points above the relegation spots, with those two teams playing each other at the same time we were playing Airdrie, rather than being right down in the thick of it.
Yeah, it's actually a question that will be much easier to answer on Wednesday morning, I think, than it is at the moment. Because really, I mean, certainly a win for the Rovers, really, I think, barring some fairly terrible events, would remove any doubt of. I just cannot see. I see if we win on Tuesday, I can't see any two of Airdrie, Dunfermline, Accies overhauling the points gap there.
Even
let alone you've got other teams in between there as well.
I was just going to say Queen's Park as well and Morton.
Exactly. So you're talking about, all of those bar one picking up enough points to overhaul us. I can't see it. But from a more kind of wider standpoint, it would be interesting if Airdrie were to beat us on Tuesday and then the other game is a win for someone. Because then all of a sudden, Airdrie are only 7 points adrift from either Accies or Dunfermline with a game in hand. You'd be very worried if you were whoever that team was. So hopefully it's a case of we can beat Airdrie on Tuesday night, and then they can reel in Dunfermline, who they're 10 points behind with a game in hand, over the rest of the season. So my kind of gut feeling is I think they've just left it a little bit too late, Airdrie. I just think that they're going to have a really, really good back half of the season, like almost promotion playoff form, to really dig themselves out of it, and I can't see it. But they are a lot better than they were that first half of the season, so that they're not by any means going to make this easy for us. I think of the two, on a kind of on paper, I think Airdrie's a tougher game than Hamilton at the moment.
I would absolutely agree with that, but I also think that we are far better than the first half of the season as well.
Oh categorically.
That's like a very important factor to make. I don't think we've got again, it's a trite point, keeps getting raised, but like we didn't have an identity really under sort of Neil Collins, whereas now you feel like, okay, we know Robson's MO, we know how Airdrie like to play, hopefully that can work to our benefit.
I think there's only really 3 teams in the division that I think you can look at and say, actually, they got better in January. Which you would think everybody would get better in January. Like, you've had half the season, here's a chance to make some changes, go and improve yourselves. You'd think everybody should be able to do that. But really, Falkirk, obviously, getting Scott Arfield is a huge, based on the evidence of his game so far, that's a huge boon for them. And then the fact that they sort of lost Luke Graham and then got him back, let's call that an improvement, even though it's really an equal point. Airdrie, certainly, as we've said, are better than they were the first half of the season, and so are we. Undeniably, we are, even again, at risk of sort of over-analysing or stating the importance of the last 2 games, just in the way that we play, in the way that we look, the players we've got available, we're better than we were first half of the season. Jury's probably out on Dunfermline, given the number of changes that they've made, but doesn't sound like they're playing very well. Accies are in free fall. Queen's Park have lost key players. Morton managed to get Tommy Adeloye, but he's picked up an injury. Stuparevic has picked up an injury. Every chance they're weaker as well. I've run out the teams that I've mentioned. Doesn't matter. You get the overall point.
Partick Thistle, I think, is the key one as well.
They could get better, but I mean, the fact that they lost Miles Roberts, obviously, is huge for them, and their other business does not look impressive. So, this game on Tuesday, I think, is a bit of a bellwether. Kind of in the same way that Ian Murray, we struggled with the games that sort of we should have won. I think this is one, if you go right, you look at the last few weeks, I don't think you could really make a case other than saying that we are the sort of form side in the playoff hunt, or the sort of current favourites for it. You know, Morton would back themselves, Queen's Park aren't out of it, Thistle have the spot at the moment. I think you go right on current form, it's the Rovers. If that's going to be true, you need to go and beat Airdrie. Like, yes, they've improved, but they're bottom of the league. You want to finish 4th, you have to go and beat the team who are 10th. And the fact that would also make it 3 wins on the spin would also be pretty significant. We've not done that an awful lot recently.
It's worth just saying as well, just to come in quickly, Airdrie's last 2 games were against our playoff rivals, Morton and Partick. Those were both draws. So that is an opportunity to go out and say, look, if you want to be better than those teams, this is a kind of game where you can go out and, if not avoid defeat, actually go and win. So that's, just adding to the bellwether metaphor, which that's the first time I've ever heard that word used outside of a general election, by the way.
Oh, it's an anti-football phrase.
Well, I think I ran out of the cliches earlier on, so I'm now having to import them from other spheres.
When you look at the table, though, I think it's a really important point that if we were to win like tomorrow night, then again we'll have played a game over Morton, who've again you touched that Stuparevic is now out for the season. The guy that only scored pretty much ever against us is out for the rest of the season with an ACL injury, and then the Adeloy is obviously injured too. I think that would be a real, like, psychologically, I think for Airdrie, they would probably be a bit torn up about the fact that they've gone in this giant, what a job Dougie Imre's doing on beat and run, getting all the superlatives from the likes of Scott Byrne in the press, and yet Rovers, who've had a horrific season by all accounts, who were in a relegation battle, etc., if you listen to some fan bases and certain people, are now in a position where they've managed to claw back Thistle, they've leapfrogged Airdrie, they've taken out Queen's Park. Then you're in a really position where you can sort of say, actually, that must be a hammer blow for Morton if we can kick on and we can keep going. I think that before you might have been in a territory where we were talking about games where if we lost them, then that was sort of like last chance saloon gone with the playoffs. I feel like this doesn't feel like a last chance saloon game. It feels like this is a game that we can build momentum with and that we should go in with every bit of confidence into.
Yeah, I think Thistle's struggles have helped that as well.
Yeah,
because previously it was a bit like, we're going to have to put a lot of results together and hope Thistle fall to bits, and Thistle have fallen to bits. It really has helped. So you're right. I think we're back towards the point where actually we could lose a game and it wouldn't be a disaster. But hopefully that's not the case. Only other thing I want to touch on ahead of this one is Barry Robson up till now has been fairly strict in terms of his starting lineups. He's not made a lot of huge changes. Not massive use of his substitutes either, although we have seen a bit more of that last couple of games. Carol, do you think, given that this is the second game in 4 days, he's going to have to rely on his bench a little bit more?
I don't know. I think that nobody looked broken on Saturday. They hadn't been run into the ground. They hadn't been Brian Grahamed. So I don't know. I think I would like to see Byrne get back, but I don't want us to do what we've done in the past, put everybody in too early and break them again. If we want Tuesday, I think, is a chance for us to remind people that we're here. Everybody's had us written off. We were down and out. Relegation is coming our way, but this on Tuesday night is a chance to remind people we're here. But let's not do it with breaking folk so that we have nobody to keep going with. So yeah. I think stick with the same, but make good use of the bench.
Les, would you agree with that? Do you think we're going to need contributions from the likes of Kai Montague, Aidan Marsh, Aidan Connolly?
I think we will, and it was the one concern that I did have about the Airdrie game is that there's still, particularly in the forward positions, there's still quite a small pool of players available to us, and there's not a lot of wiggle room if we want to give someone a rest. That said, Kai Montague has come on in leaps and bounds in the last few weeks. I mean, he was terrific when he came on again. Granted, there wasn't a lot of pressure, but he was terrific. And, we're at the stage with him now where he's a perfectly viable option to start a game or even come on and do half an hour if we need him. Eden Marsh as well. So I'd be quite happy with seeing him appear. He's not hit the goal trail, really. He's got a goal against Accies. But what I do like about him is when he has come on, he hasn't been silly. So we've had strikers come in before. Cody David springs to mind, getting into a fight with Lee Ashcroft against Partick, and John Fredrickson trying to shoot from the halfway line against Cove. It's very tempting for a striker who's maybe trying to prove a point to do something daft. Marsh has not done that. He's had a crack at goal when he's had a right to do so. He's played other players in, he's set players up, he's worked hard when he's come on. And I think if we need to rely on him, I'd be quite happy with him coming in. Aidan Connolly too. So we've got viable options if we need. That's the only change I think we might actually legitimately see would be one of Gullen or Pollock dropping out for Marsh, with whoever didn't start then dropping to the bench to come on if they were needed later. That's probably the only change I could realistically see happening.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if he... Because I think it would have to be not enforced in the sense of an injury, but I think there would have to be a reason for Barry Robson to make a change to that start. I think it would have to be maybe that someone's flagging a little bit, but it will be interesting because it wouldn't be, would be unheard of by any means, given the short time between the two games. Robbie Les has just mentioned Kai Montague there. Kai Montague signed a contract extension on Friday. We were at risk of missing that out. First of all, quite happy that that's very good news. And what has been your overall impression of Kai Montague these last few weeks?
Yeah, he's done really well when he's had the game time, and he came in. I think he touched on himself in the interview that he's learning off guys like Dylan Easton, who's really perfect foil for him to be picking things up off, and just being able to learn about the game in general. He's done really well. I know that we've sort of waxed lyrical about him on the podcast just in terms of how well he's came on. He seems to be filling out his frame, albeit Barry Robson still saying that he's working with sort of the sports scientists to see how he can sort of add that more. And again, it's Barry Robson, who's a player that's played at the highest level, certainly in Scottish football and as well with Middlesbrough, internationally capped. So he knows what it takes to get to that level. So again, if you're wanting anyone to be able to teach Kai Montague how to reach that point, then it's there. It just seems like a really humble guy, and I think it's the credit to the sort of network that we built up, that we're bringing in guys like that have been able to adjust to offer themselves as real assets. So yeah, really happy to see him pen a new deal going forward into the future. And I certainly feel like even moving forward that while he might not be starting games this season, certainly next season, that he's got that opportunity to be able to kick on and make it show what he can do, and being able to make himself a viable starter, which I'm sure, to be honest, even himself, that he'll be happy with his progress so far.
I think the biggest compliment I could give him is even as recently as like the cup game at Linlithgow, I think the attitude was still like, oh, here comes this kid, let's see what he's about, let's see what he can do. And now it's like, oh, Kai Montague's coming on. Yeah. In the same way that you're like, Aidan Connolly's coming on. It just completely elevated to the point of option at first team level. It's like, I really like what he does. Let's see what he can do today. So yeah, they're just very, very keen to see how he continues to develop, but as fundamentally just an option at first team level now. So, I think there was some talk that he was very close to starting last week because Dylan Easton, there was a question mark over him. And again, like, you wouldn't blink. You wouldn't at the start of the season, you'd be like, Jesus, what's happened? Like, there must be a bit of an injury crisis that we're having to start this guy. That thought wouldn't cross your mind there. And, all credit to him for getting to that point. And just finally, for tonight, Carol, I know we've got International Women's Day coming up. and you have been putting in, a power of work behind the scenes in preparation. What can you tell us about what you've been up to and what's coming up?
Well, first of all, it's not just me. It's been a team that have been working for what feels like months on this. It's now a fixture on the Wraith Rovers calendar that we celebrate International Women's Day, and this year it falls on the 1st of March, where we will host Queen's Park. And as usual, there'll be some nice bags for the first 350 women at the game. Wraith TV are going to do a fantastic feature with Train Like a Pro. Dylan Easton and Sean Byrne are going to have them along not this Thursday coming, but the following Thursday for their girls session and do some chatting away and promoting the girls there. There's going to be a prize draw for both sets of fans, so we've got stuff for Queen's Park fans as well, so they're involved. It's mainly funded by Rovers down south, but other supporters groups have contributed this year. So we've put some of that funding to combating period poverty, and there'll be proper dispensers put in the south stand and north stand for free sanitary products, which will be funded through the foundation and through the club. There'll be a special biscuit at the kiosk on International Women's Day, double biscuit, a special poster featuring the girls as well, and keep your eye out around all the pubs and lounges. There'll be a special edition beer mat and coaster in conjunction with International Women's Day, and also on the back of that will be the QR code to scan to see more about the Community Foundation and their projects with inclusion and etc. like we talked about, well, Duncan, you talked about last week. And I'm sure I've forgotten something.
Kev talked about it. I sat there and listened.
And there'll be features in the programme and other features on social media and working with local businesses, and I'm sure I've forgotten stuff. But yeah.
That was a lot of stuff, Carol, to be fair. It was clearly an awful lot of work's gone into that from you and others. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what else we've got. So as you say, so that's Saturday, but I think we're missing you for the pre-match, so that's where we got that there.
Yeah.
But again, anything else that we can draw some attention to, I'm sure we will do. But that will do us for this evening. So we will be back at some point midweek for another doubler. So we'll break down whatever's happened at Airdrie and look ahead to that game against Queen's Park back at Starks on Saturday. So we will speak to you again then. Thank you and goodbye.
Where's my birthday cake, John Greer?